$5 trillion. Let that number sink in for a second. Welcome to this explainer. We're diving right in today. Back in 2008, when the global financial system was literally teetering on the edge of total collapse, $5 trillion was the size of the private bond market. And to save it, the Federal Reserve did something completely unprecedented. They just started buying up massive chunks of this market, which fundamentally changed the central bank's role in our everyday lives forever.
It was a massive break-the-glass kind of intervention, and it really brings us to the ultimate question we're unpacking today. What forces actually control the American economy? Is it you and me, the consumers? Is it the banks, politicians, or just the market itself?
To truly understand our current financial reality, we've got to pop the hood and look at the complex machinery running the whole show. We're going to break this all down into 4 distinct engines that drive American wealth, policy, and growth.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at the commercial engine through the rise of megabanks, the monetary engine during this wild era of easy money, the policy engine being fiercely debated in Washington right now, and finally, the market engine that's driving today's stock market to absolute all-time highs.
All right, let's start with number 1, the commercial engine, and the rise of the megabanks. To wrap our heads around modern banking, we have to look back at the really incredible century-long story of Bank of America. It actually started way back in 1904 when A.P. Giannini founded the Bank of Italy. His goal? Serving hardworking immigrants in San Francisco who were totally ignored by the big traditional banks. During the 1906 earthquake, get this, he literally hid the bank's gold and cash under crates of fruit on horse-drawn wagons just to save it. He was out there giving loans on the street based on nothing but a handshake. Later on, he even went toe-to-toe in a proxy fight against the absolute king of Wall Street, J.P. Morgan Jr., and won. But fast forward to 2008, and this scrappy man-of-the-people bank had consolidated so much that it needed a jaw-dropping $45 billion government bailout just to survive the mortgage crisis.
That evolution, right there, perfectly illustrates how our banking system shifted away from local, community trust and turned into this landscape of massive mega consolidations. Today, we're dealing with a system dominated by giant institutions that have become literally too big to fail. When they stumble, the fallout for the rest of the economy is so catastrophic that the government basically has no choice but to step in and save them.
Which leads us straight into engine number 2, the monetary engine, and what we call the age of easy money.
So, when those massive banks stumbled in 2008, the central bank had to jump in. With our democratic institutions kind of paralyzed by political gridlock, the Fed suddenly became the main engine for economic growth. To stop a total economic meltdown, they rolled out quantitative easing, or QE. This was a highly experimental policy, basically financial alchemy. The central bank created money out of thin air to flood the banking system with liquidity, buying up mortgage-backed securities and bonds to try and force banks to lend to everyday consumers.
But a pretty stark divide followed. The Fed was hoping banks would lend to struggling Americans, right? Instead, the banks used all that injected cash to trade and buy up the exact same assets the Fed was inflating. Main Street got hit hard with foreclosures, high unemployment, and this massive loss of household wealth. But over on Wall Street, this easy money fueled record bonuses and a massive stock market rally. The recovery was heavily skewed toward the wealthy.
And the financial system got completely addicted to this cheap fuel. By 2013, when Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke just vaguely hinted that the Fed might gradually slow down or taper buying these assets, the markets absolutely freaked out. This famously became known as the taper tantrum. Every single time the Fed tried to take away the easy money candy, the markets would just nosedive, putting the central bank in a really terrible spot.
Moving right along to number 3, the policy engine and how current economic policy is taking shape.
While the Fed controls the money supply, the federal government is the one holding the fiscal steering wheel. And based on our sources, there are some sharp, real-time political clashes happening right now over exactly how this engine should run. On the one hand, Democrats like Senator Raphael Warnock argue that aggressive tariff policies are actively hurting small businesses. He points out that the U.S. economy shed 72,000 manufacturing jobs in the months right after initial tariff announcements, arguing it's making it way harder for everyday Americans to afford basic goods. On the flip side, the current administration sees a totally different trajectory. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent fiercely defends their agenda, arguing that we are actually at the very beginning of a massive manufacturing boom. He points to policies like full tax expensing for new equipment in factories as the ultimate catalyst.
The argument here is that these moves will bring industry right back to American shores and really drive up our gross domestic product.
So, the big takeaway here is that this administration's policy engine runs on 3 very specific steps. First, you've got aggressive tariff tactics meant to reshape global trade. Second, unique tax maneuvers like the newly proposed Trump accounts. That's a plan to give a $1,000 seed investment to all newborns so that the 38% of American households without equity exposure can actually participate in the stock market. And third, sweeping deregulation and permitting reform to try and speed up industrial growth.
Let's check out our 4th and final engine, the market engine, with markets hitting all-time highs.
You might be wondering, how does all this history, easy money, and fiscal strategy actually fuel the real-time speedometer of our economy? Well, despite all the political and economic noise out there, we're seeing an absolutely incredible stock boom on Wall Street right now. It's being driven by pent-up demand and the massive artificial intelligence revolution. The market just saw a historic 11-day consecutive rally on the Nasdaq. Think about this. 89% of S&P 500 companies are beating their first quarter earnings estimates. And it's the magnificent 7 tech giants like Amazon, Microsoft, and NVIDIA that are really setting the pace for this huge surge in wealth.
To give you a sense of just how unbelievably fast this market is moving, look at an AI-adjacent company like Micron. Because of severe memory shortages in AI data centers, analysts are projecting a mind-bending 600% rise in Micron's earnings this year alone, plus another 100% jump expected by 2027. It is a modern-day gold rush, completely fueled by tech innovation.
Which brings us to a really critical point: navigating future risks, or what happens when the speedometer hits the red line. Because as any mechanic will tell you, if you run a high-speed engine too hot for too long, it's going to overheat. Right beneath these flashy stock market highs, we've got some severe potential headwinds that could totally destabilize the whole machine. Geopolitically, we're looking at an open-ended Middle East conflict that's threatening a massive global oil shock, potentially keeping 600 million to 1 billion barrels off the market. Then there are supply chain crunches hitting critical materials like helium and fertilizer. And closer to home, the U.S. government has a staggering $10 trillion in national debt maturing and rolling over very soon, which puts immense pressure on our entire financial system.
Which leaves us with one final, vital question as we wrap up this explainer today. With all this incredibly volatile fuel pumping through our system right now, from global conflicts to massive national debt, can the engines of the American economy actually sustain these all-time market highs? Or are we driving at top speed straight toward another breakdown? It's something every single one of us needs to watch closely. Thanks so much for joining me today, and remember to keep questioning the forces that shape your world.